अथ नवमोऽध्यायः। राजविद्या राजगुह्ययोगः। श्रीभगवानुवाच इदं तु ते गुह्यतमं प्रवक्ष्याम्यनसूयवे। ज्ञानं विज्ञानसहितं यज्ञात्वा मोक्ष्यसे शुभात्। राजविद्या राजगुह्यं पवित्रमिदमुत्तमम्। प्रत्यक्षावगमं धर्म्यं सुसुखं कर्तुमव्ययम्। अश्रद्धधानाः पुरुषा धर्मस्यास्य परन्तप। अप्राप्य मां निवर्तन्ते मृत्युसंसारवर्त्मनि। मया ततमिदं सर्वं जगदव्यक्तमूर्तिना। मत्स्थानि सर्वभूतानि न चाहं तेष्वस्थितः। न च मत्स्थानि भूतानि पश्य मे योगमैश्वरम्। भूतभृन्न च भूतस्थो ममात्मा भूतभावनः। यथाकाशस्थितो नित्यं वायुः सर्वत्र गो महान्। तथा सर्वाणि भूतानि मत्स्थानीत्युपधारय। सर्वभूतानि कौन्तेय प्रकृतिं यान्ति मामिकाम्। कल्पक्षये पुनस्तानि कल्पादौ विसृजाम्यहम्। प्रकृतिं स्वामवष्टभ्य विसृजामि पुनः पुनः। भूतग्राममिमं कृत्स्नमवशं प्रकृतेर्वशात्। न च मां तानि कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय। उदासीनवदासीनमसक्तं तेषु कर्मसु। मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः सूयते सचराचरम्। हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय जगद्विपरिवर्तते। अवजानन्ति मां मूढा मानुषीं तनुमाश्रितम्। परं भावमजानन्तो मम भूतमहेश्वरम्। मोघाशामोघकर्माणो मोघज्ञानाविचेतसः। राक्षसीमासुरीं चैव प्रकृतिं मोहिनीं श्रुताः। महात्मानस्तु मां पार्थ दैवीं प्रकृतिमाश्रिताः। भजन्त्यनन्यमनसो ज्ञात्वा भूतादिमव्ययम्। सततं कीर्तयन्तो मां यतन्तश्च दृढव्रताः। नमस्यन्तश्च मां भक्त्या नित्ययुक्ता उपासते। ज्ञानयज्ञेन चाप्यन्ये यजन्तो मामुपासते। एकत्वेन पृथक्त्वेन बहुधा विश्वतोमुखम्। अहं क्रतुरहं यज्ञः स्वधाहमहमौषधम्। मन्त्रोऽहमहमेवार्ज्यमहमग्निरहं हुतम्। पितामहस्य जगतो माता धाता पितामहः। वेद्यं पवित्रमोङ्कार ऋक्सामयजुरेव च। गतिर्भर्ता प्रभुः साक्षी निवासः शरणं सुहृत्। प्रभवः प्रलयस्थानं निधानं बीजमव्ययम्। तपाम्यहमहं वर्षं निगृह्णाम्युत्सृजामि च। अमृतं चैव मृत्युश्च सदसच्चाहमर्जुन। त्रैविद्या मां सोमपाः पूतपापा। यज्ञैरिष्ट्वा स्वर्गतिं प्रार्थयन्ते। ते पुण्यमासाध्य सुरेन्द्रलोकम्। अश्नन्ति दिव्यान् दिवि देवभोगान्। ते तं भुक्त्वा स्वर्गलोकं विशालम्। क्षीणे पुण्ये मर्त्यलोकं विशन्ति। एवं त्रयी धर्ममनुप्रपन्ना। गतागतं कामकामा लभन्ते। अनन्याश्चिन्तयन्तो मां ये जनाः पर्युपासते। तेषां नित्याभियुक्तानां योगक्षेमं वहाम्यहम्। येऽप्यन्यदेवता भक्ता यजन्ते श्रद्धयान्विताः तेऽपि मामेव कौन्तेय यजन्त्यविधिपूर्वकम् अहं हि सर्वयज्ञानां भोक्ता च प्रभुरेव च न तु मामभिजानन्ति तत्त्वेनातश्च वन्दिते यान्ति देवव्रता देवान् पितॄन् यान्ति पितृव्रताः भूतानि यान्ति भूतेज्या यान्ति मद्याजिनोऽपि माम् पत्रम् पुष्पम् फलम् तोयम् यो मे भक्त्या प्रयच्छति तदहम् भक्त्युपहृतम् अश्नामि प्रयतात्मनः यत्करोषि यदश्नासि यज्जुहोषि ददासि यत् यत्तपस्यसि कौन्तेय तत्कुरुष्व मदर्पणम् शुभाशुभफलैरेवम् मोक्ष्यसे कर्मबन्धनैः सन्न्यासयोगयुक्तात्मा विमुक्तो मामुपैष्यसि समोऽहम् सर्वभूतेषु न मे द्वेष्योऽस्ति न प्रियः ये भजन्ति तु माम् भक्त्या मयि ते तेषु चाप्यहम् अपि चेत् सुदुराचारो भजते मामनन्यभाक् साधुरेव समन्तव्यः सम्यग् व्यवसितो हि सः क्षिप्रम् भवति धर्मात्मा शश्वच्छान्तिम् निगच्छति कौन्तेय प्रतिजानीहि न मे भक्तः प्रणश्यति मां हि पार्थव्यपाश्रित्य येऽपि स्युः पापयोनयः स्त्रियो वैश्यास्तथा शूद्रास्तेऽपि यान्ति परां गतिम् किं पुनर्ब्राह्मणाः पुण्या भक्ता राजर्षयस्तथा अनित्यमसुखं लोकमिमं प्राप्य भजस्व माम् मन्मना भव मद्भक्तो मद्याजी मां नमस्कुरु मामे वैश्यसि युक्त्वैव मात्मानं मत्परायणः ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे राजविद्या राजगुह्ययोगो नाम नवमोऽध्यायः।
Can you make me co-host so that I can share the screen? Okay, right. So welcome all of you for today's 11th session on Bhagavad Gita life lessons. Today we are discussing chapter 9, very important, most important chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. Most confidential knowledge, Raja Vidhya. So we will begin with the invocation. I hope you are able to hear me on the Zoom also. Just confirm, someone can confirm you can hear me.
Yes, Prabhu, we can hear you.
Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakthurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Shavadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dhinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanashute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So there's a chat message saying that my voice is low. Is it like that or is it okay? Dinakar Prabhu, please confirm if my voice is clear there.
It is okay, Prabhu.
Okay.
Yes, Prabhu. Shall I start recording, Prabhu?
Yes. Just give me some time to share. Tell again. No, not. Can you get even larger? Not this? No, no. Okay, so we begin now. So as I said, this chapter is one of the most important chapters. It says most confidential. Why it is most confidential? Because this is the main message that Lord Krishna wants to give to Arjuna. So sometimes we have this doubt, can we relate with God personally? Do we have a personal connection with God? So this chapter is answering how it is possible to personally connect with God. And so that is the explanation which will be given here. That's why it's said to be the most confidential, which means most beneficial to us, most important for us. And that's why it's known as the king of knowledge, which means if you know this, everything else will be obvious. Just like if the sun rises, then you can automatically see everything around you. So before explaining this knowledge, Krishna is glorifying or telling the importance of this knowledge. And but one of the qualifications for receiving this knowledge is one should be non-envious of Krishna. What is non-enviousness means? Krishna is the Supreme Lord and all his opulences are already established. But still, if one chooses not to accept or acknowledge that, that is a symptom of enviousness. Which means although we know that person is great, we don't want to acknowledge it. And therefore, we don't really benefit from that. Just like supposing the sun is there outside and I voluntarily choose to close my doors and ask for a proof, prove me that the sun is existing. So it is not very intelligence. So likewise, although it has been established that Krishna is God and Bhagavad Gita is the most important scripture and devotion is the best process, still we don't accept it. And why is that? Because of enviousness. So that is one disqualification. So next Krishna is explaining how it is the king of all knowledge. Just like king means he owns everything. So this actually bhakti means what? We are able to make the best use of everything in life. That is really bhakti because everything we are getting from God. And if we use it to the best way, that is also bhakti because we are devoting it to the service of the Lord. Someone has provided it for some purpose. We use it in the best capacity. then that is appreciated and is the most confidential, which means the most dear to us, most natural to us. And that's why it is joyfully performed. Something which is very in our inherent nature, we enjoy doing it. Just like a fish is there, it is enjoying its swimming, or a bird is enjoying its flying, because it is within its nature. So originally, bhakti is within our nature, and when we do that, we are the most happy. Hmm? And but the faithless person, let's check it. Again, people are saying voice is low. Hmm. If that is still the case, you can tell me. Put the okay. Speak without the headphone. Is it any better?
Yes, it is better now, Prabhuji.
So what is the disqualification? Faithlessness. Faithless means, although Krishna is trying to help us by giving us the highest knowledge, we don't have that faith that if I do devotion, I will attain all perfection. So not only will we get the Supreme Lord, we'll get also the highest knowledge. Because we all know that knowledge is power. And next Krishna is talking about is Aishwarya. Aishwarya means opulences. How we can recognize him while we are in this world. So that's why it says Krishna's relationship with this world. Just like if you want to know a rich person, we have to see him in relation to his opulences. Supposing he has a very big house or a very beautiful car, then we can appreciate in relation to that. So Krishna pervades and maintains the entire material world. Material world means it's constantly changing. It has to change actually. But he is pervaded, just like the sun is in one place, but its heat and light pervade everywhere. And if the sun is not there, nothing can exist. And therefore it is maintaining the entire universe. Even the planets will not be in orbit if the sun is not there. What to speak of life? So Krishna similarly pervades, because this sunlight or whatever effulgence is there, it is coming from Krishna's body. So he says maintaining by his energies. The energetic, just like the powerhouse is there, and it's supplying us the electrical energy by which we can operate. So he is not in everything, yet he is not in everything, which means he is not dependent on his energies. Rather, the energies are depending on him. In our case, we are dependent on the energy. But in the case of the Lord, the energy is dependent on him. So even if something goes wrong, you cannot blame the Lord for that. Supposing the electricity department is supplying some power and you misuse that power supply and you get an electrical shock or some accident happens, you cannot blame the electrical department for supplying the electricity. It is your problem that you misused it. Similarly, the Lord has created or has these energies for some purpose. And if you misuse that energy, it can cause you harm. So we cannot blame God for this creation. Why did he create like this? All the questions we cannot ask. So the material world is created and destroyed periodically. Why it is created and destroyed? Because there are some living entities who want that. Just like a child is there, he wants to play, then he wants for some toys, and after the game is over, he wants to get rid of those toys. So like that, our desires are constantly changing, and in order to accommodate such changing desires, Krishna has to manifest and unmanifest this material world. And still it is under his control. It is not whimsically happening. Recently, the Nobel Prize was awarded to some 3 scientists who proved that everything is happening by chance, or it is probabilistic and not deterministic. So, but all this work cannot bind him. So in other words, he is perfectly in control. Sometimes we create something, supposing I start some organization, and we know sometimes it is going into a loss, and I have no control over it. I cannot change that, and I have to give up at some time. We were seeing some organization, they become bankrupt, and they declare bankruptcy, which means they have lost control of what they created itself.
But in the case of the Lord, it is not like that. Nothing can go out of his control. That is the definition of God. So, and therefore he is the supreme director. He is the director of all directors, or cause of all causes. Nothing can go wrong. Even if something seems to be going wrong according to us, even Brahma goes to the Lord and prays when things go out of his control. But then Krishna comes to set it right. So that's because he is the supreme director. Now, even though Krishna is saying this about himself and it's already established, but still people deny worship of Krishna. So they go towards the demigods. Different types of worship of Lord Krishna. First of all, there are some people who outrightly defy God, and they are known as fools. In the last chapter, 7th chapter, Krishna told, they are known as Muda, Maya. The fools consider Krishna an ordinary human. Even if we prove to them that Krishna existed, they will say, okay, he is also one among us. Maybe at that moment he was very powerful, but now he is not there. So even we see so many powerful human beings, so he is just one among them. Even if they accept, first of all, that he is not just a mythological character and he existed, if you prove to him that you go to Dwarka and this palace is there, and there are some proofs we show them also, they will say maybe he is just another successful human being. Just like Duryodhana, when Krishna showed his universal form, Krishna thought he is just a magician and he wanted his servants to arrest him. So Mahatmas or Ananya Bhaktas worship Krishna constantly, but those who are realized souls, they are known as Mahatma. So what they do, they do unalloyed devotion, which means they have realized that if I use my faculties perfectly to serve God, and then I will achieve all perfection. And there are three kinds of jnanis who approach Krishna. Now, some people have no knowledge about God, and some people have cultivated knowledge about God, and they have different levels of knowledge, and accordingly they worship Krishna or follow the instructions of Krishna. Here, worshipping Krishna means following the instructions of Krishna, having faith in Krishna, believing and following what he says. So there are three kinds of jnanis. So one of them worship Krishna in his universal form of Vishwarupa Upasana, which means they appreciate nature. There are some people who are nature lovers. They learn from nature. They observe some things in nature, and they, in order to glorify it, they explain about this nature to others. So these are known as the worshippers of his universal form. They recognize that God is energy is prevalent in this world, and by glorifying their material nature, they are indirectly glorifying God. So this is one kind of worship. And is the all-pervading ultimate shelter and cause of all causes. So they recognize, just like the sun is there, we have no experience of the sun planet. Neither we have experience of the sun God, but we have experience of the sun in terms of a heat and light. Similarly, some people don't have experience of the personal feature form of God or his planet, although Krishna talked about his planet in the previous chapter, but they have experience of the Lord's energy. Because just like the sun is there, we can experience it through its heat and light. So this is one way of recognizing God. The other is demigod worshippers, Pratikopasana. Pratika means they think God has some representatives. By worshipping them, it's as good as worshipping God. So this is one conception. They think that there are many gods. So I need not accept just one God. Just like a father may have many children. And so they are also entitled to whatever the assets the God is having, or the father is having. So they think that the demigods also, they can give me. I need not go just to God. So this is one conception. But this is a wrong way of worshipping Krishna, because whatever demigods give, there's only a fraction of what God can give. And even if you put all the demigods and you get something benefit from there, what you get from God is much more than what all the demigods put together can give. Because these demigods are for only one universe. There are many universes, unlimited universes. So ultimately, demigods are able to give whatever they do by the grace of Krishna. Whatever he is applying them only, who becomes a demigod? One who gives whatever he receives to others, he becomes a demigod. Supposing you have your hands filled up already, I cannot give you more. But if supposing I'm giving you and immediately you're giving to someone, then I can keep on giving you and you will keep on giving it to others. So demigods are those living entities who transfer the benefits given to them by God to others. And that's how they qualify to become a demigod. Just like the sun is there, he is doing it as a service to God by giving heat and light to everyone in the universe. So, but some people think that these demigods are ultimate. But what is the benefit? At most, what they can get, they can go to heavenly planets. But the problem in heavenly planets is everything is time bound. So after you exhaust some your pious credits, you have to again come back to this material world. Because even the demigods cannot hold that position forever. But one's destination depends on one's worship. So therefore, Krishna had already established in the previous chapter that one should worship Krishna and go to his abode. Otherwise, any abode you go, you have to come back, even including the demigods. So next, Krishna is talking about the glories of Krishna Bhakti. What is so great about worshipping Krishna? Why it is the most confidential? Why is the Raja Vidhya? Because first thing is Bhakti is simple. Why? As I said in the beginning, it's very natural. For a fish, it is very natural to be in the water. If you take the fish, a big whale may be there. As long as it's in the water, it's very powerful. Supposing you take a whale out of the water, it cannot do anything. Or a shark, blue whale is supposed to be a shark. Or similarly, a bird is there in the air, but once its wings are cut, it cannot do much. So like that, we are strong in our natural condition. So our natural condition is to do devotion, which means whatever God has provided us, if we use it to serve Him, that is known as bhakti. And Krishna accepts anything offered with devotion. So actually, whatever God is giving us, we are giving back to Him. But that is more than that is the devotion. Devotion means we acknowledge something. Just like if you give someone something, he says, thank you. And we appreciate that gesture, that at least he is having some gratitude. So devotion is basically a gratitude we offer to God. Just like if something belongs to me and you cannot buy it, but you want to use it. Just like we borrowed this sound system. If I have to buy it, I have to spend quite a lot of money. But someone has allowed me to borrow it. So I thank him. So thank you, sir. Because so like that, if we appreciate God, that is known as devotion. So therefore it says, do everything as an offering to Krishna. Because whatever we possess in this world is ultimately coming from God. So we have to offer it back to Him. That's why when the people worship the Ganges, they take some water from the Ganges and chant some mantras and put it back into the Ganges. So like that, we have to offer it to Krishna and thus be freed from bondage. Supposing if I steal this one, instead of taking permission, I steal it, then I become bound to punishment. But if I take permission, that person gladly will give it to me. So like that, Krishna is equal to all. Now, normally if you go to demigods, unless you worship them, they will not give you. But as far as Krishna is concerned, he is giving the benefits to everyone. Whether you worship him, you're atheist, you're a fool, whatever mischief you are doing, still he is giving benefits. Just like the sun is there. It doesn't say that I will not give my heat and light to this place. Or here there's dirty water, so I will not absorb the water from the dirty place. No. It is equally giving the benefits. If our rain is there, sometimes rain does not choose that, okay, this is a desert, so I will not put my rain here, or here is there's ocean, already water is there, why should I put water in the ocean? No, it is equal. So therefore Krishna also gives his benefit to everyone, but especially inclined to it. But if you see, supposing you are giving some money to a person and is misusing it, naturally withhold it, and you will want to give it to him when he knows the value of it. So similarly, Krishna doesn't give devotion to everyone, or he doesn't make them understand the importance of devotion unless that person is really interested. So he forgives and purifies an imperfect devotee. Now let us say, even if you take to devotion, there may be some imperfections or impurity. Just like a magnet is trying to attract some iron object, but iron is covered with some filling, some mud. But still, if there's a powerful magnet, it can still attract. So similarly, this attraction to Krishna, devotion, it purifies us. So from imperfection, perfection will come about. Initially, mostly all of us are imperfect. But when we take, just like an iron rod is there, if you connect it to the electrical source, it also acquires the property of that electrical source. Or if the rod is put into the fire, it also acquires the properties of the fire. So when we engage in devotional service, whatever imperfection may be there, they become removed by this process of devotion. In conclusion, Krishna says, people of sinful birth. So what is sinful birth? Sinful birth means we are determined to go against our nature. So even if you, because of your sinful propensities, you are put into a situation where by nature everything is forcing you to act wrong. Sometimes people blame the circumstances. They say, I am by nature very good, but the circumstances made me like a villain. But you cannot claim like that, because Krishna is saying here, people of sinful birth also can attain Krishna. So no matter how condemned you may be, still God is giving an opportunity to come back to your perfection. So what to speak of qualified people to worship Krishna directly? So that is the conclusion of this chapter. Krishna concludes by saying, Manmana bhava mat bhakto. Always remember me and become my devotee. And the same instruction he will repeat again in the 18th chapter, 65. Which means this only verse, or there's one more verse, but this verse and again repeated in the 18th chapter. So, in the previous chapter, Lord Krishna mentioned that a pure devotee solely fixed on performing Ananya Bhakti unto him surpasses the paths of light and darkness. Because the 8th chapter, Krishna was explaining how at the time of death, you may get different destinations depending on at what time you leave your body. At what time you leave your body depends on your preparation of your lifetime. Just like if you have a particular catch a particular flight or train, if you plan your journey, then you will go on time and reach it. But if you miss it, then you have to catch some other train. So similarly, our change of body is under the control of superior beings. Suppose you are going from one course, from B.Tech to M.Tech or PhD, everywhere at each stage, some person is qualifying you for that course or whatever. Similarly, the change of body on which we are always depending, that is under the control of superior beings. And those superior beings are under the control of time. So at one particular time, one person gets the strength to do something. Just like we were also at a younger age, I could do something which I cannot do now. So likewise, at particular time, some people get some strength from the 3 modes, and they become in charge of our changing the bodies. But a person who becomes a devotee, he doesn't have to depend on such persons. In other words, at any time, if he leaves his body, he is always directed by Krishna. So this chapter is like explaining in more detail what Krishna already explained in the 7th chapter. The 7th chapter is known as confidential knowledge. And the 8th chapter is known as more confidential. And 9th chapter is most confidential. Which means he is giving more and more details about himself, Krishna. So that we get attracted to him and attracted to devotional service. So coming back to the first verse, Krishna is glorifying knowledge that he is about to reveal. At every chapter beginning, Krishna tries to encourage Arjuna by saying, now I am going to give you better knowledge. Just like you see a student is there, he is responding well to your teachings, he is grasping the subject better. Then you reveal more knowledge to him. So simply Krishna is encouraging Arjuna by saying that whatever I am going to reveal to you is the most perfect. But there's a qualification. That is just like if you have a lot of money, you won't give it to a person who's envious of you. You will give it to someone who is dear to you. Similarly, Krishna wants to give this knowledge to everyone. But there are some people who are envious. The snake is the example of an envious living entity. The snake is there, no matter how much milk you feed him, he will accumulate poison, and with that poison he will bite you also. So similarly, if you give this knowledge to a person who is envious of God, he will misuse it. Supposing you have a lot of money and you give it to some person thinking that he will benefit, and on the contrary, he uses that to harm you, then he is said to be envious. So Krishna explains that non-envious, anasuya and faith, shraddha. These are the two qualities. One should be non-envious. But there may be some people who has no faith in God and he may be non-envious. In other words, you say he's a neutral person. He doesn't care to know about you and therefore he's not envious of you. So that is one category. But there are not only non-enviousness, you should also have faith. Just like you had some faith, that's why you came. There are some people who may not know about me or may not know about the subject, and so therefore they don't criticize us. But one step further is to have faith that this is beneficial. And these are the real qualifications to receive the knowledge. So just like when we are trying to grow a plant, the ground should be receptive to the seed, sowing that seed. And after you sow the seed, then you have to put some effort to grow that plant. Similarly, there's one qualification to receive this knowledge. After receiving that knowledge, you have to build that on that knowledge. So these two things have to happen. So, therefore, this is jnanam and vijnanam. Just like we are receiving some sunlight, but there are some people who are able to make best. You put a solar solar power. You are utilizing that power to generate electricity. So similarly, this knowledge is there, but using that knowledge, you have to put it into practice. Then it is known as jnana vijnana. Then only you can benefit from devotion. So knowledge of Bhakti and realization of Krishna by non-enviousness. So if you want both the knowledge and realization, first qualification is you have to accept theoretically at least that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, Bhakti is the highest, and scriptures, Bhagavad Gita is the best knowledge. And this is there. Idam tu guhyatamam. Idam tu te guhyatamam. So guhyatamam means, guhya means confidential. Tamam, uttamam means most confidential. Pravakshami, I shall speak. So unless God reveals himself, gives that knowledge, we cannot know him. Just like a person has authored a paper. You can try to study that paper, but unless you correspond with that author, you can't get the complete knowledge. Similarly, unless God reveals about himself, our knowledge is incomplete. So, my dear Arjuna, because you are, what is the call as? Jnanam vijnana sahitam yajnatva moksha. So, before that, Krishna says, Anasuya way. Anasuya way means non-envious. My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me. In other words, if I tell something about myself, you will accept it. You will not reject it, or you will not doubt what I am saying. Idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshami anasuyave. My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall speak to you this most confidential. So here he says never envious, which means there's no point in time where he will get a doubt. He will always accept. And jnanam vijnana sahitam, knowledge of pure bhakti, hearing about Krishna, chanting his glories, remembering and serving him, that culminates in direct realization of me. One is, as I said, practical knowledge and practical experience. Both will come if you follow this process. So, supposing I say something, food is very nutritious or tasty, that is first-hand knowledge. But when you actually eat it and you see the benefit of it, then you appreciate it more. Similarly, Krishna is giving knowledge about bhakti, about himself. That is one thing which is beneficial. But when you practice what he is telling you to follow, then you get much more. Yajnatva, what is the, okay, ultimately what is the benefit? Mokshate ashubhat. You shall be relieved of all miseries. Ashubhat means miseries. How these miseries are coming? We are inviting miseries. Just like a frog is there, it is shouting in the rainy season. And it's inviting the snake by shouting. If it keeps quiet, the snake doesn't know where the frog is. But this frog is shouting to attract the opposite gender. And in the process, invites its own death. So threefold miseries are, one is caused by our body and mind. If you don't practice yoga properly, then the same body and the mind become the source of distress. And then distress caused by other living entities, that is also invited by us only. Because if we don't recognize the Paramatma in others, then that person can become the cause of, just like a tiger is there, all the Paramatma is there in the heart of the tiger, sometimes the tiger can hurt us. But there are some saintly people, even the most deadly animal is there, it will not harm them. If you go to Nepal, there is one temple, that monastery in Nepal, all the tigers will be coming and sitting like dogs or cats. They will not harm those people. How is that? Because they recognize that these people are Paramatma realized. So next is third misery is caused by demigods. Sometimes there is a natural calamity, earthquake, flood, famine, or whatever, pandemic. This is caused by superior beings. So they also don't cause harm to a pure devotee because they know that this person is protected by the Supreme Lord. Just like if you go to a foreign country and if you are a diplomat, then normally they will not arrest you because they know this person is coming from a foreign government. So they cannot apply the normal rules. So knowing such, which you shall be relieved of all miseries, yajñātva mokṣasya ashubhat. Here, the very important point is Anasuya way. Anasuya, there is one star also. Because a woman also can become envious of the husband. Husband can become envious of the wife. Then they don't get along together. But Anasuya, Atri Anasuya, they are perfect example of a husband and wife because one is not envious of the other. So once you are not envious of some person, you appreciate that person, you serve that person, you love that person. Arjuna is not envious, selfish or hostile and doesn't see any faults in Krishna. That is the importance of non-enviousness. When you don't see the fault, you see the greatness in that person. Why you are envious? You want to pull down that person. You want to minimize the value of that person. Then you become envious. Just like the snake is there, it thinks someone is my enemy. Although you are not his enemy, he thinks he's his enemy and he wants to harm you. So thus he can understand Krishna. Envious and selfish people cannot understand Krishna. What is selfish person? He is always thinking what I will benefit. What is that I will get out of this. So, but Arjuna is not like that. Because Duryodhana, when he met Krishna, he wanted his army and not Krishna. But Arjuna chose Krishna and not the army because Arjuna was not selfish. So this is the qualification, non-enviousness and faith is the qualification for doing devotional service. So just like if you want to become a government servant, you should be qualified. It's not freely available to everyone. So similarly to do devotion also, although it is very easy, joyfully performed, one should have some basic qualification. And these are the 8 characteristics of the knowledge of pure bhakti. If I know pure bhakti, what is the benefit? First thing is it is Raja Vidhya, the king of all education, essence of all philosophies. Philosophy means this reasoning, mental, logical reasoning. See, we have so many observations. With our senses, we acquire so much knowledge. All the modern scientists, they are trying to investigate and doing so many experiments. But ultimately, that knowledge is useful when they are able to analyze it. That's why you get a philosopher's degree or PhD. Why? Because you are able to philosophize what you are observing. So, but this is the king of all education. No matter how much reasoning you try to give to what you observe, unless you are able to connect you with this knowledge that Krishna is going to give, you can't get really the benefit out of whatever you are experiencing. So therefore, Krishna says Raja Vidya. And Rajaguhyam. Previously, when the kings were ruling, if anything was there, everything belonged to the king. Even if you occupied land, that land was belonging to the king and you are given permission to use the land to do agriculture or do whatever. Supposing you found some gold deposits in that place, you cannot say that it is in my land, so it belongs to me. The government will say, no, although the land belongs to you, ultimately it belongs to the government. So whatever you found in the earth belongs to the government. So similarly, whatever knowledge you can acquire in this world, ultimately it is coming from God. So that is king of education. Rajaguhyam, the king of all secrets about the eternal activities of the soul. So why it is said here Guhyam? Guhyam means, although it is what we should be knowing, everyone overlooks it. Nobody thinks it is important. There are many things, just like atom was there. Nobody previously thought atom can be used to produce a bomb, a nuclear weapon. Although they were using different forms of the atoms in the form of molecules, compounds, whatever. Nobody thought that atom can produce E is equal to mc squared. Small fraction of mass can produce that much energy. So similarly, this is the king of all secrets. Nobody knows that what is the power of devotion. They appreciate many things, but they don't appreciate the value of devotion or Krishna. That's why he's the king of all secrets. Pavitram, purest of all. No matter how much mistakes you do, people struggle to overcome their mistakes. You see, de-addiction is a major problem. Many governments or parents, they spend a lot of money to change habits of the people. But you know, the habits are very powerful. Habits die hard. So many people are struggling with their habits. They just cannot get over their bad habits. So therefore it says Pavitram, which means no matter how many times you do mistakes, if you take to devotion, gradually you can overcome the tendency to do mistakes and suffer the consequences. And it is also the Uttamam. Uttama means ignorance, mode of ignorance. But this knowledge which can help you to overcome the three modes of material nature, therefore transcendent to the darkness and ignorance of this world. In this world, if you see, everyone is in ignorance. Just like now the sun has set. No matter how hard you try, you cannot see the sunlight again. So you have to move to some other place where the sun is still in the rising. So similarly, this knowledge is Uttama, which means it can help you to always be above the three modes. You can see things very clearly. Just like if you use the instruments, the aircraft is using some instruments, it can exactly gauge the height. But if you look outside, it is very deceptive. Pratyaksha agama. Pratyaksha means this direct experience of the self. So some things you are getting knowledge through our senses, but that is defective. But sometimes the soul is also able to get some knowledge. That is permanent. Sometimes you get some experience as a soul, which you cannot communicate to others. So this direct perception of self by realization. Something which you acquire by realization, you will never forget it. Some person is very expert. Why? Because he has some experience which he will never forget and which will prevent him from doing some mistakes. And avagamam means it is directly experienced. He is able to dharmyam, perfection of religion. So what is dharmyam? Dharmyam means what you should be doing. That is prescribed duty. That's what will make you happy. That's what will make you perfect. So that is the dharmyam. And it therefore susukam, easily. And abhyayam means there is no limit to it. Normally, if you want to do some activity, it is very limited. You cannot do beyond a point. But this bhakti is something which you can do inexhausted. Unlimitedly, you can perform bhakti forever. So that is abhyayam. There is no, it can never come down. It can keep on increasing. And it is also easily and joyfully performed. Why it is joyfully, easily performed? The moment you do devotion, God is there to help you and guide you. Whereas in the other yoga process, you are more or less on your own self. The process of pure bhakti and knowledge of pure bhakti are transcendental. Just as pure bhakti is beyond the material modes, the knowledge of pure bhakti is also beyond them. Just knowing about it is sufficient. Supposing you know some rich person. Just because you know him, you get so many benefits. Even though you don't own whatever he is having, just by knowing that person, sometimes you can take an advantage. So similarly, even though you have not perfected your devotion, just knowing what is perfection, what is devotion, that itself can help you overcome many problems. And knowledge, what is described earlier, is the mode of goodness. So then one may ask, what about the earlier chapters? So that knowledge is also, but that will work for some situations, may not work in some situations. Just like you may say, I have so much knowledge is available, so why only I should get knowledge from Bhagavad Gita? Yes, that knowledge may be good, we are not denying that. But there will always be a boundary condition, a limiting condition where it will not work. So that's why Arjuna, he had all the knowledge before coming to this war. But with that knowledge, he could not solve his problem. So that's why he had to acquire this transcendental knowledge. So now Krishna again tells, although he says Arjuna's qualification is faithfulness and non-enviousness, he is also telling the corollary that faithless cannot attain Krishna. Asraddha dana purusha. So what does purusha means? One who is thinking, I can enjoy by myself. I don't need God. I don't need to do devotion. So this is known as purusha. And what is the problem with him? Asraddha. Those who are not faithful, dharmasyasya parantapa. What do they do not have the faith in this dharma? That this, if I do this devotion, I will attain all perfection. And I can overcome all the miseries. I will get all the knowledge. This, they don't have the faith. But Krishna is telling Arjuna, parantapa. Parantapa means the conqueror of enemies. So actually, what is preventing us from accessing this knowledge? Our own mind is preventing us. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, overcome this enemy. Aprapyamam nivartante mrityu samsara vartinani. But if you don't have faith in this, then what will be the consequence? They remain in the path of repeated birth and death in this material world. Why we take repeated birth and death? Because we are unsuccessful in something, we could not fulfill some desire. Then we, just like if you didn't learn something in some course, then you have to repeat the course so till you learn it. Similarly, as long as we are not satisfied, we have to keep on changing the body. So Krishna says, if you don't have faith in me, you will not attain success, and then you will be forced to take repeated birth and death. Real faith is the complete conviction that simply by serving the Supreme Lord Krishna, one can achieve all perfection. Ultimately, what gives us satisfaction is perfection, because we are all perfect souls originally. And unless we realize that we are perfect, we will never be happy. But that perfection comes only when we put our faith in the perfect person. That is the, and this also comes by association with the devotees. Just like we want to learn some subject to perfection, you have to associate with people who are already perfected that science. Similarly, if you want to practice and achieve perfection in devotion, you have to associate with people who are already perfect in devotion. Now, therefore, Krishna will talk about his remarkable powers of Aishwarya. Supposing if I tell someone I am very intelligent, famous, beautiful, even if he doesn't have faith in me, there's no point in telling him. But Krishna is already establishing what is the qualification of Arjuna, and now he is going to tell him about his opulences, by which he sustains this material world. Now people demand to know about God. If God is there, let him prove that he exists and how he is controlling this nature. So Krishna is telling, yes, I will tell you how I am maintaining this material world. So Aishwarya Jnana or Krishna's relationship with this material world. Right now, we don't see any connection between us and God or with material nature and God. So Krishna is trying to prove what is his relationship. Right now, all the problems are not being solved because they don't see a connection with A and B. If we have two entities, we are not able to see a connection with them, then we will not be able to solve most of the problems. But if you see the connection, then you can overcome the problem, shortcomings. So maintenance, so right now we don't see how this material world is being controlled by God, whether he's really controlling it, whether he can really change the scenario in this material world or the living entities. So Krishna says, Maya tatamidam sarvam. I pervade this entire universe. Sarvam means everything. You cannot, nothing you can exclude from God, and you cannot say no, this has no relation with God. Everything has Maya tatamidam sarvam. Jagat avyakta murtina. But he says unmanifest form. That is, although he just like in the puppet shows, previously they used to have puppet shows. In the puppet show, the puppet will be moving his hands and legs. But the person in the audience, he thinks the puppet is moving its hands and legs on its own. But the person who's close to the stage, he knows that the puppet has some strings tied to it. And the magicians, they do some things. And the people in the audience don't know how the magician is performing the trick. But if you observe carefully, there will be some string tied. And that string is moving the puppet's hands up and down. So this, the three modes of material nature are controlling everything. And these three modes are under the control of the Supreme Lord. So we don't see this. Just like I don't see the director now or the dean. But all this is, I'm able to do this program because he sanctioned it. So similarly, although we don't see the hand of God, he is Jagat Abhyakt Murtina, Matstani Sarvabhutani. All beings are in me. Their existence is dependent on me as I am their cause. So, but still, everything is depending on me. Every living entity, even the atom, is depending on the Lord. No chaham tesh avastita, but I am not in them. In other words, he is not dependent on this material energy. That has to be very clearly established. In other words, if something goes wrong in this material world, or if something goes wrong with the living entity in this world, you cannot blame God for that. Same example I gave, you cannot blame the government for whatever facilities is created. Supposing government as bank is there, it is provided an ATM. The idea of the bank is a facility created for you to draw the money. But let us say in the ATM someone steals money from you. Then some people may blame. So why it is like this? Why did they provide this ATM? Because I went there and I took the money and so like that. So Krishna is present everywhere by his personal representation, the diffusion of his different energies. So Krishna has his different energies and they are exhibited in the form of a powerful living entity like a demigod, or in the form of material nature. You see something very amazing in material nature. Some material objects are there. They have some inconceivable powers, like diamonds are there. Why the diamonds are valued? Because diamonds have some properties which are not in other objects. So herbs are there. They have some properties which other plants don't have. So how that is there? You can appreciate if you understand that it's all represents God's energy. As the super soul of Paramatma. What does Paramatma means? He is fully conscious. Now we are also conscious. I am living in this body, but I am conscious to a limited extent. But the Paramatma is there living in the same body and he is conscious about more than me. Just like in the department, so many instruments are there. If you ask me to explain something, I cannot know. But the person who is owning that lab, he knows well about that instrument. So similarly, this body, both to soul and super soul, both are residing in the same body. But the soul who is residing in the body doesn't know much about his own body or the around his body. Whereas the super soul not only knows what is happening in my body, but around everything. So though everything is situated in Krishna, they are not situated in him, since he is completely aloof and independent of it. So this looks like a contradictory statement. But the nature of material world also, it is contradictory. Sometimes in physics, you have wave particle duality and classical quantum dichotomy. These are all seemingly contradictory theories. But unless you accommodate those contradictory theories, you cannot explain some things. Like a complex number, it's an imaginary number. But you don't measure a complex number, but it has some significance. So similarly, with one thing, Krishna is saying that it's depending on me, and at the same time, it is not resting. It is not situated in him. So how to understand that? So we have to accept that it's Krishna's inconceivable energy by which it is possible. Yet everything is not. Krishna is not in everything. Behold my mystic opulence. In other words, the energy doesn't have any separate existence from God. You cannot apprehend only energy and not the energetic. That's what mistake we do. We find someone is very rich. We want to steal the money from him and not that person. We don't understand that if I become friends with that person, he will give me more money than if I try to steal from him. So, behold my mystic opulence, yoga maishwaram. So what kind of opulence? Opulence which will never exhaust. That is here yoga maishwaram. We have whatever, supposing I'm a very rich person. And once I die, all my riches will go away from me. If I'm a beautiful person, famous, intelligent, renounced, everything will go away from me after some time. But here Krishna says yoga maishwaram. Yoga means they will always hold on to him. Whether he wants it or not, this yoga aishwarya will always be attached to him. Everything that Krishna doesn't rest in me. Krishna is aloof, although I maintain everything. So I am not a part of this creation. Na bhutastha, for myself is the very source of creation. So in this world, so many things are being created and destroyed, but they don't affect him. So here the word is the inconceivable mystic power. Inconceivable power means we cannot explain certain things. There are many things in science also, they are unexplained. You just accept them. Even the Nobel Prize was given because Einstein said there are some hidden variables, which means he said that there are some things which you don't know and therefore this theory is incomplete. But the later people said even if you don't know, doesn't matter, as long as we know how it is and predict things with that theory, it is perfect. So this inconceivable mystic power means we cannot understand something. Just like we don't even know how we are digesting our own food. We are just eating the food and we just don't know how it is benefiting us. Similarly, this mystic power of the Lord is inconceivable. So now Krishna gives an example of how to understand that these mystic powers are at the same coming from him. At the same time, we cannot understand their relation with him. Just as the wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. So what is this example? The wind, you see, sometimes the wind is so powerful. Sometimes there's a hurricane and it's at a very high speed, it is blowing and it can cause a lot of destruction. But Krishna says that is always resting in the sky. It cannot go outside this universe. The wind can go from one country to another, maybe, or even from one state to another. All that is possible. But there's no instance where the wind has gone from this universe to the next universe, neighboring universe, or from this planet to the next planet. That doesn't happen, isn't it? So like that, Krishna says, this is giving the material analogy, how although even the oceans are there, the oceans are vast, they occupy 3/4 of the earth's surface, but it doesn't ever occupy the land. Maybe sometimes in exceptional cases, tsunami happens, that also only to some extent. There's no, unless at the time of Pralaya, the entire water doesn't come to the land. So like that, although it is so, seems to be so powerful, still it's under control of the Supreme Lord. So Krishna, creation and destruction of material world by Krishna's energies. So this manifestation and manifestation, that is the living entities acquiring a body and then giving up a body, or the planets coming to existence and getting destroyed, this is perfectly under Krishna's control by his energies. Just like the example is there, the Prime Minister is not directly controlling us. He is controlling us through his ministers or down the line. So this periodic creation and destruction, at the time of destruction, happens at the end of Brahma's life. In the previous chapter, it was described what is the Brahma's life. So in this world, everything is relative. Relative in the sense, whatever we are doing, it is depending on other living entities. If I want to do this program, I have to depend on the volunteers. So like that, or I have to depend on the institute permission. So everything that is happening here, one living entity is always dependent on another living entity. So that extends even up to Lord Brahma. So his life also is limited. So we are depending on Brahma, so our life is also limited. But Krishna's will, under my will, with my energy, the whole cosmic order is manifested again and again. But still there's a design. Intelligent designer is there. Just like this building is there, very nicely it is designed. But I don't see the person who designed it or constructed it right now. He may have left this body also. But we cannot say it happened on its own. There is some intelligent person who has designed it and constructed it. Similarly, although we don't see the hand of God in everything, by the creation we can understand and appreciate that he must be there and he has very intelligent. So all this work cannot bind me. The same example I said, that if something goes wrong in this creation, we cannot blame God for that. It is only we have to blame ourselves. Just like if I misuse the facilities here, I cannot blame the institution for that. So Dhananjaya means Arjuna conquered wealth by being a faithful servant of his own brother Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira deputed his brothers to go in different directions and fetch wealth for the Rajasuya sacrifice. Why the Rajasuya sacrifice? Not just to prove the supremacy of Yudhishthira over others, but to give benefit to all the countries. So Yudhishthira was gathering all the funds from different countries to perform this sacrifice, which will benefit all the people in the world. Even from other planets, they used to sponsor this sacrifice. So I am almost neutral, detached from all these material activities. In other words, Krishna is saying that all this material world is created not for him. Normally, if I set up an industry or an enterprise, an organization, I am trying to see what is my profit there. I have some motive behind it. But Krishna has no such motive in creating this material world. It is that we have some motive, and to accommodate those motives, he is creating this. So bondage arises from desire and attachment to action itself. So now why this material world is there? Because we have bonded to our desires. We are attached to some desires. And attachment to action and result. We want one particular result. Supposing you want a particular experiment result, you have to conduct that experiment in that particular way. Then only you will get that result. So like that, we say that I want this result, then to accommodate, to get that result, you have to do a particular activity in a particular way, then only you will get the result. So similarly, Krishna doesn't want us to do those results, but because we are adamant, we want to do it in that way and get that particular result, he allows us. So we cannot blame God for that. Now, therefore, Krishna is the supreme director. Maya-adhyakshena prakriti. Prakriti means something which is always changing. But he says Maya Adhyakshana, by my direction, this material nature, Suyate sa chacharam. Suyate means, and how, what kind of things are being produced in this world? Chara, achara. Movable and immovable. Mountains are there, they are immovable. Rivers are there, they are moving. Just like supposing this building starts moving, then it's incompatible. It's a problem. This building is concerned, it has to be stationary. And supposing I'm in a vehicle, that vehicle cannot become stationary, it has to move. So this world is a combination of moving and not moving. But still, who is maintaining that? Krishna says, I am the Hetu Nanena Kaunteya. Hetu means cause. There's the causality. Causality means we are trying to identify what is the cause. Just like this pandemic was there, people were trying to understand what is the cause. Because the effect is not good. They want to see what is the cause so they can offset that result. So Jagat Viprivartate, Mayadikshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharam Hetunanekam Jagat Viprivartate. This universe is created and annihilated again and again. So there is constant change in this world, constant flux in this world. Why? Because it is under the control of the Lord. And why that change is happening? Because the living entities have this desire to do some action and get the result. Some children are there, they want to do some activity. We know that it will not give the result. But to satisfy them, we have to give some results. This incarnation, so now Krishna doesn't want to involve in this material world. So what he does, he comes as an incarnation. The Purushavataras are there, Mahavishnu, Karnasai, Ganpotsai, Kshirodasai Vishnu. They do this secondary creation. They are known as avatars. This is mentioned. So many people have this confusion. What is the difference between Krishna and Vishnu? Vishnu means is an expansion of Krishna for maintaining this material universe. So he has three expansions. A different one Mahavishnu, from his body the universe has come, and the second Vishnu, he is inside that universe, and from him Brahma comes and all the living entities. And the third Vishnu, who is residing in the heart of all living entities. So through these Vishnus, he manifests and maintains in this, because we say Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the maintainer, Shiva is the destroyer. And all these are known as Avatars, Gunavataras actually. Among that, Vishnu is known as the Purushavatara, because this Brahma and Shiva are depending on Vishnu. So, but Vishnu also is coming from Krishna. So therefore, so what is causing our existence? Our past desires and activities. There's a continuity. We have this continuity equation. What we're saying is, whatever we are seeing in the present has some relation with the past and the future. Similarly, whatever activities we are doing now, whatever mind is thinking, body is acting, it has some connection with our past activities and past thoughts. And what we are doing now and thinking will affect our future thoughts and future actions. So we are fully responsible for what we are doing now and what we are thinking. So he is giving the results of that thinking and acting. So therefore he says, I am the superintendent. Now people worship Krishna in different ways, different types of worship of Lord Krishna. Even the atheist is just like a person. The owl is there. Owl closes his eyes when the sun is there. Even the thief is using the currency. The currency is produced by the government. The thief is also using that same currency. So there are people who openly defy God, but they will use the energies of God. So the thief is concerned, he is rejecting the government, he is rejecting the authority of the government, but he is using one aspect of the government, which is the currency. So fools are impersonal, is considered Krishna an ordinary human. Avajananti ma mooda manushim tanu masritam from bhav majananto mamabhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me. Whose derived meaning, just like owl is there, even if the sun is open in front of it, it closes its eyes. So they openly they defy God. No? When I descend in the human, why God has to descend in the human form? He is coming to attract us. He is coming as one among us so that we will relate with him and go back with him. Supposing a police officer is there, he comes in a police uniform. The moment you see him, you become scared. But let us say he comes in ordinary clothes and then he comes to you as a friend. Then you will be more likely to go with him. So similarly, God, if he comes as it is, we will find it difficult to accept him and go with him. So therefore, he comes in a form by which we can relate with him. But some people, they think, oh, the prime minister, supposing he comes to the prison to give a speech to the prisoners. We cannot say, oh, prime minister also has come to the prison. He is one among us. No, he has come to benefit us. So similarly, when God comes as a human being to benefit us, there are some people who are foolish and think that he has come as a human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord and the proprietor of all that be. So what will be the destination of such foolish people? Mogasha, Mogakarna, Mogajnana, Vichetasa. These are the four problems of being foolish in life. One is Mogasha. We keep on desiring something which we will never attain. So that is one symptom. Baffled in their hopes for attaining the Lord's abode or Salokya Bhakta. Even if you take to devotion, supposing you are not doing your devotion properly, that's why we see many people they're spiritual, but they're not successful. And people blame religion is the opiate of the masses. They say this fellow is a fool, he's doing religion and he's not succeeding in life. So that gives a bad impression about devotees. So therefore Krishna says, baffled in their hopes for attaining the Lord's abode or Salokya Mukti, or even in their material desires, people are unsuccessful because they are foolish. God wants to give them all the benefits of this material world, but since they don't use it properly, they repeatedly fail. So if you see someone who's repeatedly failing materially and spiritually, is something wrong with him. So that's why it says Mogasha, Moga Karma. Moga Karma is baffled in the futile activities and results of attaining heaven. So whatever activities they are doing, that is also wrong. And then Moga Jnana, do not attain the results of culturing knowledge, which is liberation. Even the knowledge that they have is imperfect. And Vichetasa means deluded. They see everything, they misuse everything. If you tell them this is the way, they will use it exactly the opposite. If you say this is the way it should be done, they will do it exactly opposite. So this is known as Vichetasaha. Just like Duryodhana was there, he went to that palace and he saw some water and he thought it's land and he tried to avoid it. And when he saw land, he saw what he thought is land was actually water and he walked on it and fell into it. So this is known as Vichetasa, which means we are just not able to discriminate properly. So Rakshasim, Asurim Chaiva, Prakritim Mohinim Sutta. They are attracted by demoniac atheist views. They are confident in their own way. Therefore, they are known as demoniac. Demoniac means they will do exactly the opposite. And Asuri means they are always interested in the temporary. They just don't care. Just enjoy, be happy. That's what some people say. But they don't say what is the problem in trying to enjoy whimsically. And having taken shelter of the illusory material energy. But on the contrary, the Mahatmas or Ananya Bhaktas worship Krishna constantly with devotion. It's a very important word. Mahatmanastu Mapartha Devi Prakritam Ashrita Bhajanti Ananya Manaso Jnatva Bhuta Adim Apyam. Those who are not deluded, the great souls, why they are not deluded? Just like a person, two people are writing the exam, one fellow becomes completely confused in the examination hall because he has not practiced properly. Other person is able to see it clearly. And some people come back after the exam and say, oh, it's a very tough paper. And the other fellow is happily giving the answers. This fellow thinks something out of the syllabus. So those who are not deluded, the great souls who under the protection of the divine spiritual nature, not under the control of material nature. So it's only a question of choice. Just like the same electricity, you either use it as a cooler or a heater. It depends on mechanical arrangement. It is not to depend on the electricity source as such. But the mechanical arrangement makes it function differently. So Bhajanti Ananya Manasa, though they do my devotional service without distraction. So once you come to this process, you should know to do better devotion rather than facing the problems of improper devotion. Some people come to devotion, but still they're struggling. So then they give up the devotion. But if you perfect the devotion, you can see yourself progressing. Jnatva Bhutadim Abhyayam. Knowing me, my human form, the body as the cause of everything, inexhaustible, being fully spiritual. Because in the next chapter after this, 11th chapter, Krishna will show his universal form. In the 10th chapter, Krishna will talk about his opulences. But in that process, one may forget that God is still a person. So therefore, too, in the 12th chapter, Krishna will clarify why it is important to still worship the person. Supposing you see a person, very rich person, and you say, okay, he's rich because his father is rich, or you say he's rich because he's a very lucky person, and somehow you try to minimize that person. But in the case of God, it is not like that. It is not that he acquired that opulence. It is always there with him. He never loses it, nor need to acquire it, nor maintain it. So, what do the devotees do? Sadatam yatantascha dridhavrata namaskyantascha mam bhaktya nitya utta upasite. Very, very important words. What it says? Always chanting my glories. Why they are always chanting the glories? Because they know that he is really glorious. And by glorifying him, supposing you are always glorifying a famous person, you start thinking about that famous person, intelligent person, and you also become intelligent. So always glorifying, chanting the glories. Yatantascha dridhavrata, endeavoring with great determination. It's not enough that you glorify someone. You should also do something from your side to become qualified. So they are also endeavoring. They don't say, okay, God will do everything. God is great. No, they also do something worthy, which God appreciates. And namasyantascha mam bhaktya, bowing down before me with great devotion. They are doing their part, but at the same time, they understand that I need help from God. And nitya yukta upasite. Therefore, they are perpetually worshipping. Perpetual means always. They don't think that, okay, it's enough. I've done enough of worship. That's enough for my life. No, not like that. They perpetually worship this body or the next body or any situation. Now, there are three kinds of jnanis worship Krishna by cultivating knowledge. In the previous chapter, in 7th chapter, Krishna told that four kinds of people surround to him. One is the person who is having difficulties, one person who wants riches, or one person is just inquisitive, some interest he is having. But among that fourth category, Krishna says jnani is very dear to him, which means who is coming doing devotion with knowledge. Devotion should not be done as a sentiment. Otherwise, anytime you may give it up or misuse that. But if you have with the knowledge, if you do devotion, that is attracting God himself. So there are three kinds of people who know God. One is the ekatvena, the ahangopasana. What they think that I am also like God. They worship themselves or they worship another person, saying that he's also as good as God for me. My father is God. My teacher is God. So like that, Hitler also was worshipped by the Nazi time. The Germans were worshipping Hitler. There are some film actresses. They have built a temple for her. So what it means, they think that ekatvena, they worship me in oneness, thinking themselves as God. They think I am part of God, so I am also God. This is one kind of worshippers. Another is pritatvena. They worship me in diversity in many forms of the demigod. They say, no, there cannot be one God. Polytheism. Polytheism means they can say there must be many gods. That is their logic. Just like if you think I cannot manage everything, then I will depute some 10 people and they are doing the job. That's why I am existing. I am surviving. So they think that God cannot do everything by himself. So therefore, he has to depend on demigods. Like for example, they say when Lord Rama wanted to build the bridge, he worshipped Shiva. So Shiva is also important. And then this problem happened. So people worship Brahma. So Brahma is also important. Then Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva were facing problem. Then Durga Devi was there. So she is important. So like that, they create this theory that one God is not sufficient. There must be many gods. And so this is one kind of worship. Another is Vishwato Mukham, Vishwarupa. They worship me in universal form that I am everything. Then they say another level is people saying they worship this cosmos. They say that we don't know what God's form is, but he is present everywhere. Just like the electricity or the internet is there everywhere. Wherever I put my device, I can connect to the internet. So something like that, they have a feeling that God is everywhere. So why I should only go to the temple? Why only I should attend this class? Only why I should read Bhagavad Gita? I can read any book. I can go anywhere. I can worship anyone. So this is another conception. So worship Krishna is universal form. Now Krishna is talking about. So how he can be worshipped? Okay, Krishna doesn't mind it. As long as you come somewhere close to him, he is allowing this kind of worship. So how do Dutch people worship? the various elements of all sacrifices. Sacrifice means everywhere you see some action is happening. Something is being consumed and something is being produced. So what is that? Kratu. Rituals mentioned in the Shruti scriptures. In the scriptures, that is the Vedas, it is mentioned that if you do this, you will get this result. And if you strictly, for example, it is said that cow dung is the best antiseptic. And if you follow that instruction, you can see the benefit. So there are some rituals which are mentioned in scriptures, and if you follow them, immediately you will get the result. And that was being followed in the Krita Yuga. Krita Yuga means the Satya Yuga. In that Yuga, they used to perform sacrifice, and they used to get the result immediately after performing sacrifice. And Yajna, sacrifice is mentioned in the Smriti scriptures. Shruti is different from Shruti. Shruti means it cannot be changed. You have to follow strictly as it is. And Smriti means it is written in such a way, it can be adapted according to certain situations. Just like if I have to glorify God, there's a Bhagavata Purana. If you want to glorify God, you can keep on talking. But what they did, Bhagavata Purana, 18,000 verses. So they have defined this, some subject is there. I can talk that subject for semesters together. But I define the scope of that subject in one semester, I will teach you this much. So similarly, Smritis are one aspect of the Shrutis. And then for a specific purpose. And Swada means oblation, offering to the ancestors. Now, as I told you, no living entity can exist all by himself. Just like our forefathers, they left something behind for us. And we don't see them. But still, as a soul, they are still existing. Sometimes they become angry. And that's why we see after the subsequent generation, they are facing a lot of problems. Then we go to the astrologer and he will say there's some Pitru dosha, which means your ancestors are not pleased with you. And sometimes they curse also. They are descendants. You are not worshipping me, so let you suffer. Then this fellow will suffer and he'll get some realization that that person will appear in the dream. So, Aushadam, healing herbs. Some herbs have some powers. In fact, it is said that in the previous yugas, if two bodies were bisected, they used to get some, in the Ramayana also this story is there. All the Vanaras, their bodies were cut asunder. And they used herbs, Sanjeevani Karani, and Hanuman went to bring that herbs from the Himalayas. The herbs, they can rejoin limbs of the body also. I have seen it personally. Go to the Marina Beach, they used to do some kind of a magic show. That person's limbs will be disjointed. All the parts will be separated. You can see it practically. And then how do they combine it back again? They have some herbs that that property, that healing herb, it is said. We don't know how it is working, but it works. So that is Aushadam, Mantraha, transcendental chant. Some sounds, if you vibrate in a certain way, they'll produce some effect. The Brahmastra is there. They just chant one mantra and they use a blade of grass, and that blade of grass gets so much power. How is that? How that sound has so much energy in it? So that is power is being given by the Lord. And Ajyam, the ghee, melting butter. The ghee has some properties which no other thing has. Ghee is actually an extract from the milk of the cow. But what ghee can do, that's why in Ayurvedic medicine they use ghee. No, nothing can substitute for ghee. That has some healing properties which nothing else can do. Even the pandemic, some people propose that most of the people were dying because of oxygen. The oximeters, this, that, ventilators, people are exploiting like anything. But if they put drops of ghee in the nose, many people survived. So ghee has the property, and Agni, fire. There are different types of fire, cold fire, hot fire. So all this energy, Hutam, the act of offering. So Krishna says how he can be worshipped in all these different ways. Now Krishna is all pervading. So this is localized presence. In local, you take an object, you can feel the Krishna's energy. Now Krishna is talking about all pervasive actor and how he is the cause of all causes, ultimate shelter. Pitaham asya jagato. I am the father of the whole universe. So who is the father? Father is the source for the child. Just mother is there alone is not enough. The father is required. So just material nature is not enough. The material owner of that material energy is the Supreme Lord, Purusha. He is the father of the whole universe. Mata, Data, Pitamaha. Three things are here. Mata means the mother. Some things the mother can do which nobody can do. So that he is saying, I am that mother. And Data means the maintainer. And Pitamaha means grandsire. Supposing you say, no, more than God for me, my mother and father are everything. Some people claim like that. For me, I don't know God, but I know my father and mother, they are everything for me. But Krishna says, therefore, he says grandsire. It means even if you think that Brahma is ultimately Brahma is everything, but even him, he is under the Supreme Lord. Vedyam Pavitram Omkara. I am the object of knowledge. Veda and Vedya. Vedya means, supposing I give you all the knowledge, you are studying some course, but you don't know how to apply it. What is the use of that knowledge? You have done some doctorate or whatever, and you are not able to treat some patient, then you don't know the object of the knowledge. So Vedyam. In other words, whatever knowledge God has given in this world, if you use it to serve Him, that is the best use of your intelligence. Pavitram. Ultimately, what is the problem we are facing? The contamination. Ultimately, the problem we are seeing is supposing your food is contaminated or eyes or something is gone. That's a big problem. So what is the ultimate problem is contamination in our consciousness. So that can be purified by the Supreme Lord because He is the pure Omkara. Omkara means the syllable Om. All the sounds are a combination of this A, U and In. A means you open your mouth. To utter some sound, you have to open the mouth. And for uttering some sounds, you have to roll your tongue. You have to use the tongue. Supposing that there's a defect in the tongue, you cannot produce some words. I have a defect actually. I cannot produce R properly. So tongue is important. Then the lips are important. So these three, the tongue, the lips and the mouth, air from within, all three combined only I can produce any sound. So this is made possible by the Supreme Lord, the Omkara, and Rik, Sama, Yajur, Evacha. There are actually 3 Vedas only. Originally, there was only 1 Veda that was also divided into 3. But the 4th is like a supplement. Supposing you're writing a thesis, you put 3 chapters and the supplement you put in the annexer. So like that, Atharva Veda contains all the material sciences. Whatever material sciences you have, they were already there in Atharva Veda, but that was like a supplement. The main Veda was the Rik, Sama and Yajur Veda. Sama Veda means all the songs. They could cure problems with songs. There are some Tansen or someone was singing. Just by singing, he could cure, it could cause rain to fall or bring back a dead person. So Rik, Sama, Rik means how to perform the different sacrifices. Yajur, yes, Yajur for sacrifice like that, meters and all this. Bharta Prabhu Sakhi Nivasa Saranam Shruta Tapava Pralayasthanam Nidanam Bijam Abhyayam Tapamyaham Aham Varsham Nigrinami Visrujamita Amritam Cheva Mityuscha Sat Asat Chaham Arjuna. So this is a very important word. I am the goal. Gati. Unless you have a goal, you will not achieve anything in life. Why people are not successful? Because they don't have a clear goal. So Krishna is telling, I am the goal. If you keep me as the goal, you will achieve everything in life. Bharta, the sustainer. Just the Bharta means the husband. Actually, the wife calls her husband Bharta, which means you may achieve something, but to maintaining it is equally difficult. So he helps to maintain. Sakshi, Prabhu. Prabhu means the master. By serving him, you get benefit, and Sakshi is the witness. So just like you have a coach, what does the coach do? He witnesses you from an objective way. You are going wrong. According to you, you may think I am doing right. Or you call your friend and he asks him, he will say also you're right. But you need a coach who is objective and tries to critically find what is right and wrong with you. So he acts like that witness. Nivasa, I am the abode. So if everything goes wrong, if you go to him, he will provide us shelter. And Sharanam, shelter, and Suhrit, the dearest friend. I am the creation, destruction, maintenance, resting place, eternal seed, heat, rain. I withhold and send forth rain. Sometimes the rain has to stop. Sometimes we need rain. How that is being controlled? Are we able to control from here, sitting here? No, we have no control over when the rain will come or when the rain should not come. So there is say that I am immortality, liberation, and I am also death. I am both spirit and matter, subtle and gross, Arjuna. So now, next Krishna is talking about demigod worshippers. Why people have this tendency to worship many gods? As I said, the same example, some people worshipped Hitler during the World War because they were benefiting by the World War. Just like in the pandemic, some people made a lot of money and they are praying for such pandemic to come again. So like that, there are some people who worship demigods because they get some benefit. What is the aim? Attaining heaven by piety. The notes of the three Vedas bringing the Soma juice. Soma juice means that a beverage which is produced from a sacrifice. When they do a particular sacrifice, they produce something that, because to perform the sacrifice, that person should live long. And to live long, they take this Soma juice. It's not, people think Somapana means they enjoy. But Somapana means that is to prolong the life so that they can live and complete that sacrifice. So, purified of sins, worship me indirectly through sacrifice, praying to enter heaven, attaining piety, they enter the heaven and enjoy celestial delights. So heaven is one part of the creation where your lifespan is large. Even the old age and disease and death also very fractional. The old age happens in the last year of his death. Normally, in our case, supposing you are going to die at under a particular age, old age begins somewhere much before. But in the heaven, old age happens just before they are dying. Disease also comes only before at the time of death. So all these benefits are there in heaven. And birth also is instantaneous. Here, something has to be born means it has to go through some phase, gestation period. But in the heaven, they are born just like that. When they think about it, that person is born. So these are the benefits in heaven. And coming back by enjoying the heavenly sense pleasures, the results of the pious deeds get exhausted and return to this material planet again. But what is the one big problem in heaven? Is that just like if you go into the air, once the fuel is over, the flight has to come down. So similarly, even if you go to heaven by doing all the pious theory, once the bank balance is over, one has to come back. Even whoever the owner of that heaven also has to come back. Where do they come back? Again, they have to come back to the earth planet only, and again they have to perform sacrifices. So punye matlokam vishanti. Matloka means where there is inevitable death. Whoever comes to the earth planet has to take death. Even if you manage to go to heaven where the death is far off, still you will at one point have to come to this place and experience birth and death. So these are the problems in demigod worship. Now, but what is the benefit of being Krishna worshippers? Of being only exclusively devoted to Krishna is this complete perfection. Because whatever defects there may be in the demigods or in the process of demigod worship, that is not there in Krishna worship or in Krishna's planet. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on me, desiring my association, to them I simply supply what they lack and I preserve what they have. Thus, I personally take the responsibility to carry the burden of their maintenance, both spiritual and literal. This is a very important verse. Ananyas chintayanto mam yejana padyupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. First, Ananya chintayanto mam, always remembering Krishna, exclusive. Ananya means with no other deviation. Ye jana padyupasite, they worship. Worship means they're not just thinking about Krishna. In the previous chapter, Krishna says, Ma manusmara yudhyacha. While remembering Krishna, we also have to do our prescribed duties. Then, tesham nityabhiyuktana, they are always connected with me. Just like as long as I'm connected to the internet, I'm able to communicate. So as long as they're connection with God, they're able to perform their prescribed duty. And then, yoga kshemam vahamyam. So once you're connected with God, both materially and spiritually, you'll always be benefited. Then Krishna says, what is the wrong in demigod worship? Ye panya devata bhakta, those who devotees of other gods and worship them with faith actually worship only me, but they do so in a wrong way. Supposing I have to hold my nose, I can either hold it directly or come indirectly. So similarly, instead of worshipping Krishna directly, they choose to worship, go through this demigod worship and go through all the beatings and then come to, or may or may not come to Krishna worship. Here it says, Shraddhayanvitaha. They have faith in that particular demigod. Instead of putting their faith in God, they worship the demigod and they indirectly, this is said Krishna is Avidhi Purvakam. Avidhi, why it is Avidhi Purvakam? Because after doing all that, ultimately they have to come this way. There are some people, instead of going the right path, they go the wrong path and they reach a dead end and they again have to come back to the right path. So even if they go this way, they will return back to this path. So that's why it says avidhi purvakam. And it says not, example is given the stomach. If you want to feed food to the body, you have to feed it through the mouth and it goes to the stomach, or the roots of the tree have to get the nourishment. So because aham hi sarva jnanam, so I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Ultimately, whatever you do, because you are deriving it from God, if you give it back to Him, that is the perfection of sacrifice. And therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendent nature fall down. If you don't practice your life like this, you will be repeatedly doing mistakes and feeling the frustration of life. So now we talked about the very important verse. What is the result of these different types of worship? Those who worship demigods go to the demigod planets. Those who worship ancestors goes to ancestors. Those who worship ghosts take birth among ghosts. Those who worship me come to me. In other words, you are responsible for what you are doing. You get one result, you cannot say why this result came when I didn't expect it. Which means something, what you did only has come in the form of that result. So if you end up in these different places, different situations, ultimately you are responsible. But Krishna says, if you worship me the way I have told you, you will definitely come to me. So then he concludes this chapter by saying about the patram, how to do devotion. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yomiya bhaktya prayachiti. Why he is saying of leaf, flower, fruit and water? These seem to be very simple things. But even those are a creation of God. If you learn to appreciate that even this fruit, flower, water or leaf is a creation of God, and you appreciate God by looking at that, that is, Krishna appreciates that also. And so that is the only qualification for doing devotion. That is our expression of devotion is just an expression of love. And so what is the practical lesson from this chapter? That Krishna is saying, Yat karoshi yadashnasi yajjushoshi tadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat purusham adarpanam. These four activities everyone is doing. What is that? Whatever you do, everyone is doing something. Even the laziest person will get up and do something. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you are consuming, and whatever you offer in sacrifice, everything you have to exchange for something. You have to sacrifice something, time, energy, money to get something. Whatever you do, whatever austerities you perform, austerity means you are regularly controlling yourself. You have some tendencies, you are restricting yourself. That Krishna says, do that as an offering to me. Which means whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer in sacrifice, whatever austerities, you do as I am telling you to do. That's what Krishna is telling. That's what Arjuna did in the end. So what will be the result of this? You will be freed from bondage of karma, which means whatever work you do, it will not affect you. Sometimes we do something and we regret later, both in doing the action and as well as when you get the result. But if you do the work the way Krishna is telling you, you will be happy while doing the work also and when you get the result of that action. So therefore, Krishna says, I am equal to all, but specifically inclined to a devotee. Samoham sarva bhuteshu. So even if he tells us to do this devotion and we face problem while doing devotion, he is willing to help everyone equally. Supposing you have a guide, he cannot give equal attention to all the students. Sometimes the students feel biased. My guide is not so inclined to me or like that. But in the case of God, he is equally disposed to everyone. But we see some people are getting more benefit from devotion. Well, it doesn't mean that God is partial to them. It means that that person is doing it better. That's all. Now, another benefit of doing this, Krishna says, is even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, I consider him a saintly devotee because he is properly fixed in his determination to me. In this process of devotion, even if you do the biggest blunder, he is willing to guide us because he knows that our nature is to do mistakes. Just like the parents are there, they know they'll see the child making a lot of mistakes. The moment the child goes to the school, the teachers get annoyed because it is not their child. But the mother is a bit more compassionate because it knows that the child is related to me. Similarly, because God feels is related to us, he is willing to forgive our mistakes, but the demigods will not tolerate that. Sometimes we see demigods become very angry. And suddenly a person who is very rich, beautiful, healthy, he loses everything. Which means the demigods are not happy with it. But in the case of God, it's not like that. He is always their well-wisher. Even if he becomes peaceful, which means he comes back to his original nature. Krishna is assuring that even if you are making a lot of mistakes, as materially or spiritually, he'll ensure that if you continue that devotion, you will attain perfection. So, and Krishna says, declare it boldly that my devotee never perish. In other words, just like a stray dog is there, the dog catchers come and take away the dog. But if they see a collar around the dog, they understand someone owns this dog. So they will not treat it like a stray dog. So similarly, if you are a devotee, even if you do some mistake, the demigods cannot touch you. Sometimes you see people go to the astrologer. The astrologer says, so and so demigod is not happy with you, so you have to do this worship. But in the case of a devotee, even the astrology is totally against him, also no harm, because he is protected by Krishna. So the Krishna is giving that assurance that you declare, Arjuna, that my devotee will never be influenced by anything, even if he does mistake, because he is working for me, he will come out victorious. So now he is extending this benefit to everyone. He is not denying this benefit, even if you are atheist. That's why he says, Mam hi partha vyapashrita yepi hyu papayonaya. Papayonaya means they by birth they are like that. They are doing mistakes by birth. Supposing by birth you have some defect and you cannot change it. But still Krishna says if you take to this devotion, you will overcome those defects. There are some many cases where people are handicapped. But in that position also they could achieve some success which a person with have all the facilities could not do it. So that Marie Curie, they got a Nobel Prize. She is a deaf, dumb or whatever. So this qualification for devotion is only faith and non-enviousness. It doesn't matter whatever situation you are right now. You may landed up in that situation due to the biggest mistake. But still, if you can come out of that, that is the benefit of devotional service. What to speak of, if you are already on the right path, it's much more easier for you to do devotion. That's what Krishna is saying. So what is the conclusion? This is the very important verse of the entire Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskru mam emeshti yuktevam atmanam matparayana. Always think of me. So how is this possible? Krishna, the last chapter also says, always remember me. Unless you are always doing devotion, always cultivating knowledge about God, it's not possible. So, manmana, bhava madbhakto, become a devotee. That knowledge you have to apply it in practice. Madhyaji, worship me. Worship me means whatever you have, you body, mind, words, intelligence, you use it as directed by Krishna. Offer obeisances to me, that is namaskuru. So even if you doing this perfectly, you should not become proud and think that I am doing everything, I have achieved everything. You should always remember that this is made possible by God only. Then, Mom, if you do like this, you will surely come to me, having absorbed yourself completely in me and taking my shelter. So Krishna is assuring that if you follow this process, just like Arjuna, Krishna showed Arjuna what will be the outcome of the battle. Because Krishna understood that Arjuna will exactly do as I say. So he could see the future exactly what is going to happen. So similarly, if you do devotion properly, you can see your future, or at least even if you don't know your future, you can adapt yourself to whatever is happening in your life. So that is the conclusion of this chapter. Let me hear any questions or comments. It's a very important chapter, so I took some time, and we take Krishna as the example for blaming circumstances for his bad behavior. He did not try to take the path of dharma. Can you take Karna? Okay. Yes, Karna is said to be. There's a question here. Can we take Karna as the example of for blaming circumstances for his past, for his bad behavior? He did not try to take the path of dharma. So Karna, for example, some people have some sympathy for Karna. They say that Karna was also born from Kunti, but his mother abandoned him. So that is the mistake. So whatever happened to him is mother's mistake. And then later he wanted to take the instructions from, I think, Parshurama, but Parshurama cursed him. So they say it is not his mistake. The Parshurama himself cursed him. Then there are so many ways he got cursed. So people say he's innocent. And later also, he was given the option of going back to the Pandavas. Krishna went and told him, Karna, that yes, you are not Kaurava, you are son of you are related to the Pandavas. Now also you can quit the side of Duryodhana. And he said, no, I will continue my loyalty to Duryodhana. So they say, no, he's a great person. And again in the battle we see when Krishna Arjuna fighting, Krishna told Arjuna to shoot the arrow when Karna was without any chariot or charioteer. So people say maybe God is doing injustice to us. No, at every moment there was option for Karna to come back to the right path, but he did not make that choice. That's why he suffered. So that is the lesson we learned from the Mahabharata. Whatever we read in the Bhagavad Gita is part of the Mahabharata. So what people cannot grasp from the Bhagavad Gita, they have to try to understand from the Mahabharata by live examples. Supposing I teach you something and you're not understanding, I give some case histories which will help you to understand better. So from these examples also you can understand that what is the benefit of being a devotee. Okay, any questions from the audience here, please? Yeah.
To add to whatever the professor said, this is something that we all face in our life. Sometimes or the other, we tend to blame others, saying that my circumstances were such, that is why I ended up like this. It is not like that. Circumstances, the word is a little merciful, like we have seen. It is a waste for distress. It is like you cannot get into the water and not get it. It is water is having this quality that it will make us wet. Same way, this world has this quality that it will give us misery. So just because there is misery, we will not choose the right path, that is not the right decision. There is a very WhatsApp message that keeps on circulating. Karna and Krishna are having a conversation in which Karna says that so many injustices happen to me. Why? What is my fault if I have chosen this path? And Krishna replies, if you see me, I was born in jail. And the moment I was born, I was transported to foster parents' house. And within less than 3 months old from that time, I'm having one or the other demon who's trying to kill me. I did not have my childhood in a royal palace, which I deserved by birth. And he lists all the injustices that has happened to him. Perceived injustices which have happened. It would have happened for thousands of people. It would have been great injustice. So he points out all those and he says, I still did not deviate from the path of goodness, from the path of righteousness. So why did you do that? It is your choice. So what Krishna teaches us is we have to take responsibility for whatever decisions we take or whatever choices we make in our life.
Actually, in some other Puranas, it is explained what is the background of Arjuna in his previous birth, or what is the background of Karna in his previous birth. So then if you see that connection, then you will understand why he had to go through all this. So that's what he said, everything is connected. The present is connected to the past and the future. We may not see that connection, but God knows. But still he says, even though you are in the helpless circumstance, if you take to devotion, you can very easily come out of it. Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Feel free to ask. Wrong side. So this Mahabharata, we can understand that even you may have been so perfect, but if you are on the path of adharma, against God's will, then you have to suffer the consequences. So that shows that what is the importance of being a devotee. Invariably, if you are not a devotee, you end up doing the wrong thing, like Karna did. And even if you do the wrong thing, if you become a devotee, just like Vibhishana was there, he was on the side of Ravana originally. But he chose to come back and join Lord Rama. So we became, till now, the Sri Lankam deity is also facing Sri Lanka. So that shows that whatever the circumstances is ultimately we are responsible. And the way to come out of it is also our responsibility. And that choice is offered to everyone. Particularly, this devotion can help us to either prevent wrong choices, or if you have made a wrong choice, to correct it back. See, we have to accept based on the scriptures. So scriptures were given by Vedavyasa. So there he is very clearly explaining what is the source of Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwar. So we may not know some details beyond a certain capacity, but then we have to refer to the scriptures. Their scriptures are clearly explained. Okay. No, whether you accept or not, the truth doesn't change. That is our point. So maybe partially they are correct. But just like if I say my father is more important to me than God, in one sense, yes, because relatively yes, but not in the absolute way. Like Lord Rama had to take the help from the Vanaras. So now we cannot say that even though he was God, he had to depend on the Vanaras. What we understand is he was engaging, the Vanaras wanted to serve the Lord, so he engaged them also. That way, if you understand, it's better. But if you say, no, even Lord Rama had to depend on monkeys, and therefore he is a very weak person, that's not a proper understanding. Similarly, God may have to engage Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara for his purposes. But a common man may think just like the cashier is giving money, doesn't mean the man is more important than a manager. The common man may not see the manager daily. He may see only the cashier because he is the one giving the money to him directly. Similarly, there may be people who don't understand this connection of God and Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, but that doesn't defy the fact. Anyone else has any questions or add to the discussion? Any points? Yeah. Cold fire. Yeah, just like the moon is there. Moon is able to produce light. Unless there's one kind of fire. So this moon, hot fire is the sun. That is also required to grow all the whatever is happening, the photosynthesis or whatever. That is happening because of the heat. But we also need the cooling effect. Some foods you prepare, sometimes supposing you're preparing sweet rice. Sweet rice, you're boiling it in milk and cooking the rice, everything, adding the sugar and melting it, everything. But after you prepare the sweet rice, you have to put it in the refrigerator to cool it. Then the taste increases. If you serve sweet rice in hot condition, it's not so tasty. If you cool it and serve it, it's having a different taste. Similarly, the vegetables, the fruits, trees are growing because of the hot sun. That is hot fire. At the same time, when you cool it, the night time, the vegetables are growing because of the moonlight also. Morning they grow because of the sunlight, and the moonlight is a totally opposite. Moonlight is totally different effect it is having, but both are fire only. Moon is also fire, sun is also fire. But this fire is having one effect, that's also fire. Sun is also fire, but it's having a different effect. Even fever, they say the cold fever and hot fever they have. That is more deadly actually. Hot fever, at least you know that person is having fever and you can detect it and cure it. There's something called cold fever. You don't know, it will kill a patient suddenly. It won't show in the temperature, but it is fever. Okay, any other questions relevant to the class? Any points you understood, which you take away point from this session also? Okay, we'll chant one round of the Maha Mantra. Thanks for the participants on the Zoom. We'll end it here, and we have this detailed discussion every Monday to Friday, 7 o'clock to 8. On the same link we are sharing on the WhatsApp group. So please join us next week for the 10th chapter and also other announcements. So the host can end the session of the recording.